No, Jess, it's a Hardy readathon, not a Kafka readathon. But I thought it was called Misery May. Isn't Kafka the most miserable? Okay, well, you have a point. Kafka's works are miserable. I mean, you know, waking up as a bug, that's pretty rough. But I don't think there's enough of Kafka's works to, you know, have a readathon. Not like Hardy anyway. But Kafka's life was even miserable. He had a horrible relationship with his father. He fell in love with two women who he could never actually marry. The first was rejected by his dad, and the second wouldn't leave her husband. He was dirt poor. He literally didn't have enough money at one point in his life to buy the newspaper or go out. He used to entertain himself by making shadow shapes on the wall with his hands. And then, to top it all off, he got sick at a super young age of consumption and had a horrible death. He didn't even get to see his works published in his time or see the success that he wanted to achieve. He told Max Brod to burn all of his books. Dude, he's the most miserable. Have you read anything of his? Well, I suppose you could read Kafka for the readathon. But please, Jess, don't try to take over the readathon. That's like a really poor form. Hi everyone, it's me, Jess. I'm here to share with you my picks for the Misery May Hardy readathon, and also a couple of other books that I'm going to be trying to read in May, along with the massive number of books that I've selected for the various readathons that I'm participating in. So let's just get straight to the prompts. This readathon is hosted by Gemma at Gemma Books and Scott at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. I will leave the announcement videos and all of the pertinent information in the description box below. First thing, the first prompt is to read a Hardy novel. I'm going to do the group read, which is Jude the Obscure. I managed to find this pretty crazy copy. I don't know if it's crazy or not because I don't know the story of Jude the Obscure, but check out the kid's face. I'm sorry, but whatever's going on there, I'm curious. I know it's going to be really sad. I know it involves a child. I know it's going to be devastating. I'm here for it. I'm also a little bit worried for myself, but we'll see how it goes. I reserve the right to DNF. The second prompt is to read a Thomas Hardy short story. I don't know how much of a liberty we can take with this. I know that Scott is reading a play of which I have like an ancient copy of. By the way, Scott, I'll take a photo of it and post it for you on Instagram. It's The Famous Tragedy of the Queen of Cornwall in one act, requiring no theater or scenery, by Thomas Hardy. So you can see it there. Leave it there for just a second. This is a 1924 edition, and I think I would be nervous that I would destroy it. So I'm not going to read it. Not this time anyway, until I could find a copy that might be a little bit more durable. I also picked up two on my recent visit to used bookstores, along with the copy of Jude the Obscure. I picked up two collections of short stories, and I'm considering choosing one of these short stories. Maybe if someone could recommend to me a short story, that would be a good place to start. Some ideas that I have are, I don't have any ideas, but one of them in this book is called A Tragedy of Two Ambitions. That sounds pretty good. There's also another one called The Mysterious Greatcoat. That's a good title. And then in this one we have The Three Strangers, which I've definitely heard of, The Withered Arm, and a couple of other ones. So it's possible that I might read a short story, but I'm leaning towards reading actually some Thomas Hardy poetry, because I found this lovely little poetry collection at Les Bons Débarras, which was another store that I visited. This was one of the 5 favorite bookstores in Montreal that happened to have a copy. I just came on it by accident, and I feel like it was serendipitous. So I think I'm going to read some of Thomas Hardy's poetry. This is a collection selected by Tom Pollen. I don't know who Tom Pollen is, but I guess I better find out. So that's prompt number 2. Prompt number 3. read a miserable book? Well, I think you know what I'm going to say, don't you? Given my intro. My channel is named after a certain miserable genius, and that would be Mr. Franz Kafka. And I have this book about his life and this book about his life in pictures. I have this book of little known communications with Kafka, letters and diary entries and such. I have this book about his life called Conversations with Kafka, and I have the trial, and I also believe that I have a collection of short stories. I have this little book of contemplation, and I have a book of short stories. Short story, I'm a little bit torn. So for people who've read more Kafka than me, I'm a little bit torn between reading Letter to His Father, which I think would be pretty sad and miserable because Kafka had a bad relationship with his dad. And I think that that's what the topic of this short story is. Or possibly The Hunger Artist. Yeah, so I can't decide between those two, but I will. I might read them both. Probably The Hunger Artist. And actually, I gotta say, The Hunger Artist is not in this set of short stories, but I have another collection of short stories. So I think that covers a miserable book. I also had selected Crying in H Mart for the Asian Readathon, so I'm pretty sure this is gonna be very sad. I also pulled a bunch of really sad books from my shelf when I was trying to decide what to read, and I was able to pull out quite a few if you want any suggestions. There's Death of a Salesman. That's a play, but like look at the image. There's Les Mis, if you want to read a big chunky book. There's also Shuggy Bane, which I imagine some people might be reading, which is another big chunky book. There's The Plague by Camus. And then this is like a horror story called No Exit, if you want a taste of something different. And that's a pretty terrifying, miserable situation that this young woman finds herself in. All kinds of ideas for miserable books. An endless plethora of miserable books. And even I think some of the other books on my TBR from my other TBRs are probably miserable. The other ones that come to mind are The Sympathizer, possibly The Vegetarian. Moving on to the buzzword prompts for this readathon, we have read a book you associate with one of the words cliffhanger or undergarments. I actually have two choices for this. Another book that I pulled from my shelf that I thought was appropriate was this book, whose title is Despair. I think it fits the bill. This is Despair by Vladimir Nobokov. I've never read anything by Nobokov, and it was one of my goals last year to read The Russians, and this is a book that I picked up to accomplish that goal. The dog has gotten into my sandwich wrap. This could also qualify for the cliffhanger prompt because the story itself is about, what is it about? It's about a man. It's about a man who tries to orchestrate his own suicide. Yeah, miserable, right? Yeah, cliffhanger. Does he manage to do it? We're gonna find out potentially. The other one that I've already started reading that I've been wanting to read for some time and just it hasn't gone through my rotation, but I did start it, is Vladimir by Julia May Jones. And this is great for underwear because in even the first scene, the main character, and in the very first chapter, she's fantasizing about Vladimir in his underwear. So I feel like that right there qualifies. Now, I wouldn't have necessarily known this if I hadn't already started the book, but I could have maybe guessed that there might have been a scene with Vladimir in his underwear. It makes complete sense, given that this is a book about a woman who's a prof, married to another prof, literature department in a prominent school, and her husband is being accused of sexual assault, and she's obsessed with Vladimir, who is a new hire in their department, who's just published a book and such. So I don't know if it's going to be completely miserable, but it does sound like it has the makings for this miserable protagonist whose life seems to be quite unfulfilled. Her her life, at least romantically or sexually, is unfulfilled. So, I mean, I want to read them both. But the next prompt is read a book you associate with the words building or architecture. This could also be something that I read for the Asian Readathon. This is the School for Good Mothers. I could read this instead of The Sympathizer as the book written by an Asian author. She is... Okay, so Chan is a first-generation Chinese American. So I don't know if that qualifies. I think it still does. But this is kind of a... Well, first of all, the architecture element is there. Isn't that a beautiful cover? So this is a story about a woman who, it's a dystopian novel about being a mother and doing a poor job at being a mother and being arrested for that, I believe. And she has to overcome being arrested and being locked up because the state thinks she's a bad mother. That sounds terrifying. That sounds upsetting, terrifying, and totally miserable to me. So I think it qualifies. And then the last prompt for Misery May is read a book you associate with one of the words stars, astronomy. Okay, so this is maybe a little bit of a stretch, and I don't know how miserable of a book this is, but maybe if you've been watching my TBR videos leading up to this, you could guess that the book is How High We Go in the Dark, because I'm dying to read this. And it does have the different phases of the moon on it. And it does have this concept of how high we go in the dark. That could be this concept of like, how high do we go up into outer space? I don't know if I'm stretching here. Dark implies darkness, misery, badness. I mean, I haven't read it yet. I know there's a plague involved. So those are my picks for Misery May. Woo! It is going to be an incredible reading month. The last thing that I wanted to mention, well, two more books that I want to mention. One that I've already started is Birnam Wood, which I'm really enjoying. It's for my book club. It's the book club pick for this month. I'm actually only reading one of my book club picks because of so many readathons, and I'm not very interested in the book that was chosen by my other book club. So far, I'm really enjoying Birnam Wood. So that's on the docket for May. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is for Mental Health May, I would like to read a nonfiction book. I don't read very much nonfiction, but I currently have on my audiobooks The Body Keeps Score, so I could potentially finish that book. The other book that I think I'm going to order, I just saw it on Book Outlet, that I'm interested in is called Laziness Does Not Exist by Devon Price. Devon Price has written, I believe, a book on autism or neurodivergent. It was really well received. I heard about Laziness Does Not Exist from Allison at Allison Pages. And this concept is interesting to me because I am the type of person, as you can tell, like I don't like to sit still. I like to keep moving. I have a hard time relaxing. And my idea of relaxing is reading a miserable book. So as relaxing as that might seem, this concept of laziness is a concept that I struggle with personally for my own mental health. I have a habit of overextending myself and then resenting other people or resenting my work. I don't resent BookTube, but I just mean that I do think it's a problem in our society, and I think it's a problem that's only getting worse and worse and worse. And I think it's definitely related to my own mental health struggles. So anything that gives me the opportunity to shift my thinking around the way I live my life is really helpful to me. So, and I do think that it fits in with the prompts. The prompts for Mental Health May are 4 words: disordered, caring, overcoming, and discovery. And I think that it applies to a couple of those. Probably disordered, I don't know if that's the way it would apply, but disordered in the sense of being type A and being overly perfectionist and overly ambitious to a point where it's detrimental. And the other one maybe would be discovery. So changing my mindset about what it means to be lazy and overcoming some of my compulsions around keeping busy, and looking at that and thinking about that and examining that. So I've rambled a little bit there, but I wanted to give Mental Health May some attention as well. Mental Health May Readathon is hosted by Kim at Middle of the Book March and Marilyn at Marilyn Maya Mendoza. There you have it, everyone. I don't know why I'm laughing. You know that thing when people get so nervous they laugh because they feel so overwhelmed? You know what they say? You know, if you're not going to laugh, you'll cry. Better to laugh than cry. I will see you all in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. And a special thank you to Scott and Gemma for creating this fantastic readathon. And yeah, bye for now. Sorry everyone, I have you stacked on a major stack of books for this, and I know you're a little wobbly. I'm trying not to touch the table so that I don't wobble you. I can't get through a video without some kind of dog noise. Who is Tom Pollen? Tom Pollen was born in Leeds my dad went to the University of Leeds in 1949 and grew up in Belfast and was educated at the University of Hull and Oxford. He has published 8 collections of poetry, 2 major, anyway, Tom, sorry, yes. If you don't laugh, you'll cry. That's what they say.